So, Keeper, welcome to the Black and Raw Podcast. It's really good to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you, Tino. I'm happy to be here. I've looked at some of your previous podcasts and you really get into some conversations. And so I am really happy to be here. You go into some stuff. Yeah.
No, thank you very much. And so I guess going into some stuff, what was it like finding out about the sexual abuse of your sisters?
Well, let me give you some context. If you don't really give me a few minutes, I can give you the story, and I think your audience will have a better appreciation. So I'm just kind of jumping into the middle of it. In 1977, here in Los Angeles, which is where we are, my family was incredibly poor. I went to 11th grade school before I graduated high school.
Wow, that's a lot.
And in fact, this is before 1977, in 1971. And so we were incredibly poor. We lived in abject poverty. I lived in 21 different places before I eventually moved out and was homeless 3 times. So about this time, my mother and my aunt and my uncle, they were seen to try to make some extra money because we were living on government assistance. We couldn't pay rent. I was going into streets as a little boy, looking for bottles to try to turn in for some milk or some eggs or something like that. That was not uncommon for me. And so while we're doing my mother is doing all of this, she hears her kids singing around the house. Because at that time, Michael Jackson and Jackson 5, they were all over the place. We were hearing, I Want You Back, ABC, Who's Loving You. I mean, it was everywhere. Man.
Classics.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we were singing around the house. And my mother said, would you kids like to sing? Because as a singing family, we could make more money. They were like, sure. I've got 3 brothers and 4 sisters. So there's 8 of us kids. Next thing you know, we are singing after-hour nightclubs all over Los Angeles. We were singing at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, getting up, going to school, come home to Earth, take a quick nap, and repeat it. We had gotten to be pretty good. And we were rehearsing on a Saturday afternoon when the phone rang. And my mother walks over to the phone. Hello? Who? Hold on. And then she turns and looks at us kids and says, Michael Jackson's on the phone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that Michael Jackson. The guy and the brothers we had been emulating all the time on the phone. And he wants to speak to the brother directly under me. Now, I'm brother number 2. I am the second oldest. My mother had all 8 of her kids by the time she was 24.
Wow.
Had her first when she was 17. And so we are pretty close, not only in age, but we're singing together. We are pretty close. We lived in South Central LA, and it was gang-based city at that time. We had the birth of the Crips and the Bloods and all that stuff. That's where we lived in South Central. But all the singing kept us off the street. Granted, we couldn't afford an $80 or $90 a month rent, but it kept us off the street. And so now we've got Michael Jackson on the phone, and he wants to talk to the brother directly underneath me. My brother goes to the phone, all excited, of course. Hello? Yeah. Okay. A minute later, he hangs up and screams, Michael Jackson said he's heard of us, said he heard us singing dance just like him. For us to keep going, we'll get there someday. Do not quit.
Oh.
Now we jump cut to 1977, and we are everywhere, Tino. I mean, dude, we were magazines, concerts, TV. We were everywhere. At that time, we were with United Artists Records, and also that year, we had made the coveted Billboard magazine's top 100, not once, not twice, but 3 times. 2 singles and an album. I tell you, who as a little kid could not dream of a better life after all of that? Michael Jackson called. The next thing you know, we are doing what they're doing. Not only that, in 1977, Motown had just completed their exhaustive 3-year search to replace Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 because they had lost him to Epic Records. And who did they choose? Motown chose my family to replace Michael Jackson and Jackson 5 Like,
That's
really?
crazy. Big shoes
I
to fill
mean,
as well.
but it's not only just big shoes, but a life of poverty is about to go from here to here like that.
Mm,
We were about to step into fame. We were about to become infamous, I suppose. Wealth was at our feet. I like to say, the bus was outside. It was revved up. It was warm. The door was open. All we had to do was go outside and step onto the bus, and we were gone. They had created the TV show. In fact, I have the script for the TV show in my office. It's called At Wits End. It's a variety show. I got the pilot. I'm like, man, we were done. It was a wrap.
mm,
In fact, the woman who discovered the Jackson Five was bringing us to Motown.
wow.
That's how interconnected we were with them at this time. From Michael Jackson in 71 to this, replacing them at Motown, to the same woman bringing us to Motown. So we're getting ready to sign the largest new artist contract Motown offered any group ever. Where the Jackson Five had one lead singer, we had 8. All of us sing lead. Me and my brothers all played instruments. My sisters were killer. They could, Aretha Franklin, Shaka Khan, they could hold their own with all of them. It was amazing. Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, my brothers and I, done, not a problem, all day long. And so this week that we are about to sign this contract, which is going to be on a Thursday or Friday, the previous Saturday, my sister screams upstairs, boys, come downstairs, family meeting. We all come running downstairs. Now, earlier that day, my sisters had been going in and out of a bedroom or a bathroom, and doors were slamming, and you could hear heated voices, and you could hear them doing their thing. I'm just thinking, okay, it's the girls. They're doing what they do, siblings, all this stuff. They're doing what they do. And so I didn't think anything of it. And neither did my brother. So I go downstairs and I enter the living room. Now, as I enter, my oldest sister, the third oldest of us 8, as I said, I'm number 2, is pacing back and forth in front of the entryway to the living room. And she's very, very angry.
Something's happened.
It wasn't all that odd because she and my mother could get into things and, they'd be at each other a lot. Or she's, there's, it's just family stuff.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all that odd to see her like that. But what was odd is when I entered the living room, my 3 youngest sisters, the 3 youngest of us 8, in fact, the youngest 2 are twins, are sitting in a far corner of the couch, and they're huddled together, and they're not saying a word. Nothing. That didn't make any sense because all they did was talk. All they did was joke. They were constantly teasing. In fact, that was us all the time. Someone would be in tease. Someone would be in, we were cracking jokes on each other all the time. But going to the living room, and it is quiet. And not only are they huddled in the corner, they look a little scared. And so I look, oh, now I'm the last kid to enter. My 2 other brothers are also sitting on the couch, and they're quiet, but they're like me. They're like, what the hell is going on? We are about to become rich. Our life is about to change. All this is about to be over. And they're looking and wondering, where's all the jubilation? Where's all the happiness? Where's all the joy? We have done it. We are there. My older brother is standing at the far end of the couch behind my sister. And I looked at him. Yeah, we just kind of lock eyes on each other. And we go like, okay, what's going on? Seconds later, after I enter, my mother and stepfather enter the living room. And my stepfather goes and sits in this brown recliner that sat in the middle of the living room. And he immediately bends over and does this.
Oh no.
What? What's happening here? My mother, who was usually very bubbly like her kids, very effervescent, full of energy, full of life, has a very stoic look on her face. She walks to the middle of the living room and turns around in front of the window that overlooks the street outside. And she does not smile. She does not say a word. All she does is scan the room and look at her children. And then she locks eyes on my oldest sister. And you could just see the daggers coming out of her eyes. Me and my brothers, we are totally lost.
It's totally confused. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, our lives are about to become unrecognizable because we are about to become so famous. Everything we've ever dreamt of, have ever hoped for is about to happen. Our family could barely eat, days, homeless. Me going to 11th grade schools because we moved so many times, because we got evicted so many times. What? How come no one's happy? But my mother knew what was coming. Everyone knew what was coming except the four boys, me and my brothers. My sisters were discussing what was about to happen earlier that day, I learned. They were discussing it. Today would be the day that we tell the boys a secret that had been going on in our family since 1971.
Wow.
Since the year we started singing, since the year that Michael Jackson called our house, since the year that my sisters, the youngest, were 5, and then the third one was 6, and the oldest was 9 or 10. We were about to learn something. And so that's what they were talking about all morning, my sister. You're a brother, and you are about to be hit with 3 emotional earthquakes. In California, we are so accustomed to earthquakes. I mean, buildings shake, bridges, freeways crack all the time, trees are uprooted. It's no big deal. It's very common if we get a 4.0 or 5.0 and we're sleeping like, it's just a 5.0.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back over. Everyone else around the world is freaking out. And we're like, right. That's any day that ends in Y to us. I mean, it's an everyday occurrence. It's not a big deal. And so those things can be put back together. You could patch a building. You could put new rebar on a freeway. You could plant new trees. Hell, you could actually plant adult trees in the spot where the other tree just sprung out. That's how common it is here.
Like nothing happened.
Exactly. But emotional earthquakes, that's a different matter altogether. Because emotional earthquakes, they come with the unexpected PTSD type of reaction, post-traumatic stress disorder, or just the emotional darkness that you're not prepared for. So my mother stayed in the middle of the room, and she finally decides to talk. And what she says, these 3 emotional earthquakes, will be the words no brother could ever prepare for. The words no brother ever expects to hear. All I know is something is wrong, and my stepfather still has his hands covering his face. He still has yet to look up. My mother said, your stepfather has been molesting your sisters for years. Wait, what did you just say? no, what? No. What has been going on? How long? And my mother's talking about it. And, all I'm hearing is things like liquor store, apartment, this sister, that sister. It was not computing.
Mm.
I was unable to comprehend. Now I'm about 16 or 17, and my whole life had been with these people. We did nothing else. There's no drugs, there's no alcohol, there's no gang banging, there's no hanging out in the streets. We didn't do any of that. We were just singing, going to school, and trying to eat. That's what we were doing. And so I'm being hit with news that there's no way I could prepare for. And I'm just knocked back. My entire world is crumbling.
Yeah.
But that's just emotional earthquake number one. He then said, I have known all along.
Mm.
Wait a minute. No. How do you put any of this together? How do you, as a kid, put any of this together? You tell an adult this is happening, they can't handle it. They are so knocked off balance. They are trying to figure out and calculate everything, the impossibilities of it, and how could I not know? And no, this just doesn't happen here, not us. That happens at other families.
Mm.
And I'm going through the same thing, as it turned out were my three brothers. We were all in the same boat. We were tumbling into this darkness. We were tumbling into this void. We were dropping so fast, there were no handles to slow us down. There was nothing to arrest our descent emotionally. We were just tumbling and tumbling and tumbling. And you're a brother, and you don't know what to do. My sisters already knew what was coming, not only because they were talking about it, but because they had already been victims for years.
Yeah.
They just did not talk about it because the predator, my stepfather, and my mother, who empowered my stepfather, had threatened them. If you tell your brothers, I'm going to do this to you. If you tell your brothers, I'm going to hurt them. I'm going to do this to them. I'm going to do this to your little sisters. I'm going to do this to that sister. I'm going to do ... And of course, when you are under that sort of stress, even as an adult, you don't do anything because the threat is real. The threat is so emotionally challenging. You're just, okay. And then you're trying to figure out the entire shame and the fear of all of it. And, there is this isolation, and then there's a stigma. And so you don't want the neighbors to know. So there's all these things that are coming into play. And my sisters had already gone through that. They were already trapped in that. And now here I am with my three brothers. We are now trapped. And not only are we trapped, but we have just lost the most important thing in our lives. The belief of what our family is has now just been shattered. We are trapped. As bad as it was to learn from my mother what happened, what my oldest sister, the one pacing back and forth, what she did and what she said would be the thing that would really lock us down, that would trap us for decades. For me, I was locked down for 45 years. My oldest sister spun around and pointed at her four innocent brothers and said, you can't talk about it. It didn't happen to you. It only happened to us girls. You can't talk about ever. And like that, relationships between brothers and sisters that were so tight were broken on the living room floor, just crushed, absolutely devastated. No coming back. It was over. We were over as a family. And so, for context, that is where our story begins, because I am the author of the book Helplessness, which is the emotional health challenges brothers experience once we learn our sisters have been sexually abused. It is a brother story. It is a brother, or possibly the very first time, telling what brothers go through emotionally and mentally as we try to navigate and absorb all the slings and arrows that are just coming in us, the shock, the disbelief, the guilt, the blame, the anger, the betrayal. All of it is coming at us so fast. The confusion, the emotional crisis, the just, there's just so much. You know, you want to have this protective instinct, but you are paralyzed. And so the challenge becomes, what do brothers do? Because no one ever asks the brothers, are you okay? After all this comes out, no one ever asks, do you need to talk? No one ever checks on the brothers. The sisters will get attention in some form or another. Even the predator and the person who empowers them, their story becomes one that starts to filter out, and you see you see the sisters figuring out. In fact, my sisters are already figuring out their coping mechanisms. My mother and my stepfather had already figured out their coping mechanisms, which were to shut down my sisters. But now, me and my brothers were victimized, where my sister said, you can't talk about it, it didn't happen to you. Yes, it did. It not only happened to us, it was just now out in the open. Because as long as it was happening to my sisters for 6 years, it was happening to me and my brothers. We just didn't know about it. There could be certain conversations we would have with our sisters, and they would react in a certain way. And it would be like, why are you reacting like this? But those conversations triggered things for them. We didn't know it. You know, it would bring flashbacks for them. It didn't know it. And now here, me and my brothers are now part of the entire drama, the entire confusion, and just we now know that we have been sexually abused emotionally.
Can I ask?
Sure.
Because I think there is a lot there. And, for your sisters, like, they went through something very traumatic, didn't they? And the fact that you guys sort of were thrown with that information, I can only imagine, as a brother myself, like, if that had happened to my sister and I didn't know, I'd be furious, I'd be sad, I'd be angry. And then to be told by your own sister, who you're always going to be protective over your siblings, to then say you can't talk about it. You have to sort of repress all the emotions that you have about this situation. And that then limits the sort of relationship that you guys can have. And you said you'd been on a 45-year journey. I wanted to understand sort of what that looked like for you, and how that sort of manifested in, repressing these emotions, repressing the anger, the hurt. And I imagine the impact that had on your relationships with your siblings.
It had a tremendous impact. First of all, with our sisters, these are the people we needed to speak to the most. We needed to speak to immediately, because they would be the ones who could help us understand. They would be the ones to be able to tell us what had been going on, and then to be shut out of the most important conversation of our life was devastating. Back in 1977, you could go into a bookstore and you could find, or magazines, you could find an article on some woman or girl sharing their story about their sexual abuse. You could go into a bookstore. Every now and then you'd find a movie. There would be some documentary. But now, to be thrust in this, there were no support systems for brothers. And so the relationships with my sisters, you as a brother, you are completely lost because as time went on and we still tried to maintain some semblance of relationship with them, you know, because we were all still pretty young, we were all still living together. But you would hear every now and then how come you didn't hear what happened? How come you didn't see it? How come you didn't see my tears? And you want to talk, you want to be able to ask the questions because the disbelief is the immediate, but then you start getting the guilt, you start suffering the shame of not knowing, not being able to do something, to be told, do not move. What brother can hold that in? As you said, we have to suppress that. And now we have to push down all of our emotions just because you don't want us to talk about it. And as we would hear things from time to time or see things from time to time, what ended up happening, was you're told you can't talk about it, but then you are expected to answer for your non-participation. And those two things cannot exist. It is a paradox. They cannot exist in the same place. And yet that's where we were. So I immediately decided, okay, what am I going to do? There's got to be someone that I can talk to. It turns out there was absolutely no one for us to talk to. So those conversations were not allowed by me and my brother. My sister's words were so complete, were so absolute. Me and my three brothers didn't even talk to each other about it. And immediately after it happened, in this 10 minutes, my stepfather faked a heart attack. Immediately.
Faked a heart attack.
Faked a heart attack.
Wow.
And my mother immediately said, okay, I got to get him out of here. I got to take him to the hospital. Since they knew what was going to happen, that was their plan to exit the room.
Wow.
So me and my brothers wouldn't start to figure out, okay, what are we going to do now? We got to do something. They immediately left the room, which then meant there could be no questions asked. There could be no accountability brought. They immediately left. Me and my sisters and brothers, we just stayed in the living room for about 10 minutes and no one said a word.
What was the atmosphere like then?
It was numb. I guess is the best way to put it. The atmosphere really just centered around my emotional state. At that time, I did not have the emotional capacity to be worried about this brother, that brother, my sisters, because emotionally, I was lost. I didn't know what to do. And so as I'm in emotional state of the room, I would just have to go on just a silence that everyone was scared. Everyone was frightened. Because now you have to start to think, how are we going to eat? How are we going to pay bills? How are we going to get through to the next day? Who's going to find out? Which aunt? Which uncle? And you start going into the whole stigma of all of it. And so everyone has their own individual distinct reaction. And it's all based on your relationships with your individual sisters. And so as you look to try to create or put back together those relationships, it's almost difficult. The manifestation of just the psychological and emotional impact of it, it's hard for me to even put into words. There's this loss of trust. There's this issue of self-esteem and self-worth for brothers that are now being challenged, particularly for me and my older brother, because how could we not know? There is as we began to go forward in our later years, there were plenty of do's, should haves, and would haves, and could haves that I did and did not do. Plenty. Because my mother, when she got my stepfather out of the house, that time, because she let him back in
Yeah.
because of our need for his income. The After she got him out, she told us, "Okay, I will handle this. I will take care of this." And so you're a kid, you don't know what to do, so you immediately defer, even though she is the one who empowered him. But you're like, okay, she knows what to do.
Yeah.
And so
Still
all
in your
8 of us,
husband.
yeah, and so all 8 of us just stepped back and accepted, okay, she's going to do it. And for my sisters, their thing was, okay, mom is finally going to do the right thing by us.
Yeah.
What it meant for me and my brothers was, okay, you can't talk about it. It didn't happen to you. Now mom's going to handle it. So you don't have to do anything. And the honest truth is that this is all in my book. My book is really about things that I could have and would have, should have done, but it's the emotional and the psychological damage that had been done. And how do you overcome it? How do you find your way back to your sisters? And how do you find your way back to yourself? It meant I went 9 years without doing anything. And as I mentioned in the book, it was my mother's words were blanket. It meant I didn't have to do anything. And I was also honoring what my sisters wanted. They didn't want us talking about it. They didn't want us doing anything. But all along, you should have done something. That these conversations needed to be had at the very least. But our sisters did not want us in those conversations. Brothers, when we're put in this situation, which is this trap, it's like being put in a little box and you're put on a shelf in the closet and you are emotionally tucked away. And this is not only true for brothers, it's also very true for men in general. When they learn that their spouse or their sister or someone is being sexually abused and we're not involved or even invited in the conversation. There's so much we want to do, and yet we carry this pain.
Mm.
We carry this trauma. We carry this hurt, but we have no outlet.
It's something.
Brothers need to be involved in the conversation. Because another thing that ended up happening was my sisters, at one point we were so tight, we were not enemies. You become enemies. And for me and my brothers, as innocent as we were, our problem was what's between our legs is what's between the legs of the predator,
Yeah.
my stepfather. And that immediately, through gender proximity only, made us guilty. And in some ways, even more so, because how could we not know?
Yeah. What did, in terms of, your sister sort of saying those words to you and, by the sounds of it, sort of the emotional journey that you went through. And we talked about how how your relationships together sort of were damaged at that point. Have you, I know you've had conversations with your sisters about this. I was also listening to an episode that was on your website about you and your experiences when you were younger, which I'd love to get onto later. But how did those conversations end up happening around 40 years later?
It took 45 years. But I will tell you what happened 9 years after we found out and what kind of drove this conversation 45 years later as I'm just being eaten away. Hearing songs that we used to sing, remembering fun that we had, because we did have a lot of fun and it just was just eating and grinding on me emotionally. 9 years after what happened, I am about to get married. My fiance and I are going to get married in November of 1986. And about 3 months prior, I realized because my mother is still seeing him secretly, and we figure out she's still seeing him.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, I was living with my fiance at the time, and my mother brought him back to live in the house. Two of my sisters were gone. One of my brothers was already gone, but I knew once I found out he was there that I still have my two youngest sisters are there. And 3 months before I get married, I'm thinking, okay, this cannot be. I have to do something.
Mm.
Something has to happen. And it's eating on me. It's grinding on me. As I mentioned earlier, just the trauma is just weighing me down. I stopped eating. I started losing weight. And on a Saturday, I tell my fiance that I've got to go back to the house because I still had a bedroom there. My mother still kept the bedroom because, being a very young, being engaged doesn't mean you're married yet. So you still got a bedroom here. Oh, all right. So about 3 months out, I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't. Imagining that he would still be there after I got married was something that could not be for me. And no one had done anything yet. So I told my fiance, I got to go back to the house. I'm going back to the house. This is 3 months before we're to be married. I said, I got to handle something. And she said to me, are you okay? Will everything be all right? And I said, well, I think so. We'll see. She said, do you want to tell me what you're going to do? And keep in mind, I hadn't told her what I was going to do, even what I was thinking, but she could see something was emotional wrong. And I said, no, I don't want to tell you. And she said, are you coming back? I said, yeah, I'm coming back. I have no idea if I'm coming back. So I go to the house on a Saturday. The bedroom that was mine was upstairs. It was right off the landing of the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the stairs, make a left, the door is right there. 30 feet down the hall is my mother's bedroom where she would be with my stepfather. I went into the bedroom and I'm not in a good place. I'm in a very dark place. I'm in a place where no brother should be because it's a very dangerous place. I'm pacing the bedroom for about 2 hours, waiting to hear a sound at the other end of the hall, the sound of a door opening. I'm sweating. It's a very cool night, but I'm drenched. I would lie on the bed. I would get up, lie on the bed, and I would start to say, okay, can I do this? I am planning to kill this man tonight. The instrument of his death is leaning against my door jamb. It is my favorite baseball bat. He is dying to life. I was in such a dark place, it never even occurred to me that what I was about to do would make the situation worse for my sisters emotionally.
Yeah.
Because they would say to themselves, we didn't have to say anything. We should have just kept it quiet. Otherwise, he would still be here. And then that would be a whole new set of trauma. And oh my goodness, it would have been so much worse for them. But I wasn't thinking like that. I didn't even think about the impact on my fiance that I'm going to be married 3 months later and that she could even have a husband. It never even occurred to me. Never, because I was in such a bad place. I didn't tell anyone what I was about to do. I was just a brother who had reached a point and it was about to go down.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And not only was it about to go down, dude, I was so okay with me dying. I was so okay with my life ending that night. I was just cool because one of us was going to die. And my warped thinking had gotten to this point. If I kill him, he's gone, and my sisters never have to worry about him anymore. But I'm also going to be dead because I'm going to the gas chamber because we had the in 1977, we still had the death penalty.
Yeah.
I am going to go to jail and I'm going to be convicted of first degree premeditated murder. I'm done, but I'm okay. My sisters are protected. Or if he kills me, he's going to jail and he's going to die because he murdered me. Either way, he's gone. It was such warped thinking, but I'm a brother who's looking for some kind of vengeance for his sister. I'm trying to get some sort of retribution because of my failure. Not knowing, first of all, the guilt and the shame associated with that, and then not doing something was just too much for me. So I'm at the house. As I said, I'm in the bedroom and I'm just back and forth. I'm imagining what he's going to do to me. He's 6'6", 250 pounds. I'm 145 pounds. I'm 5'8". He outweighs me by over 100 pounds.
Yeah.
He's almost 10 inches taller than me. And he's a massive dude. And I'm this little skinny thing. And I start imagining, okay, if I do this, if I approach him, he's going to just crush me. But then I start thinking about my sisters. He pulled her into a closet. He unzipped his pants. You know, I'm just imagining what he did. And he made her do this. And he did this to this sister. He did that to that sister. And these vivid imaginings are just intruding into my mind. And it gives me strength. Because whenever I think I can't do it, gotta do it. Has to happen. So this goes on for 2 hours. Did I hear it? And I look up, get up, and swing my feet off the bed, plant them on the floor. I hear the door close at the far end of the hall. I get up, I crack open my door, and I see him coming out. Okay, this is it. I put my hand on my back. Like I said, it's leaning against the door jamb. But then I hesitate. Oh, should I really do this? Oh, what's going to happen? Okay, I'm getting scared because emotionally, I know what's about to happen. I'm about to commit murder. And even though I had told myself I'm okay with it, now was the moment. And so I take my hand off the bat and then I open the door and step out anyway. As you go down this particular hall, this hall overlooked the stairwell. There's this 3.5-foot wall that you could look over and look down the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew in all of my planning, Tito, that I could not be there. My back could not be to that wall. And so I planned this out for 3 months. I know exactly where I have to be. I know how I need to approach him. And so as I stepped out, he sees me and he screams my name. Hey, blah, blah, blah. Stoic. I am stoned. And I think comprehension just hit him upside the head because he looked at me and he stopped smiling and he just kind of tilted his head down. And I think he knew the moment had arrived. The one stepson who would do something was about to do something. The one who would actually step up to him is about to finally do it. We start approaching each other, and I'm just locked on his eyes. We get to the center of the hall, next to the short wall, and God damn it, if my back is not against the short wall, the one place I'm not supposed to be. And I recognize I'm in the wrong place. What the hell? I have to somehow spin around. So I start to spin around and he kind of blocks. But I just force my way anyway. And now we are face to face. Neither one of us has our back to the wall. He also wore a huge afro wig, which put his height over 7 feet tall. He's so much bigger than me that I cannot look over his shoulders. I come face to chest with him. My face is right here. And I realize in that moment just how big he really is. All these years, I'm thinking he's a big dude. He 6'6", blah, blah, blah.
I
But
can take
now,
him though.
oh, exactly. You know how what we brothers do. You know how men do. But now the moment of truth, and it was like he had blocked out the sun. He had blocked out all the light in the universe. Like, yeah, he's so big. And he's just looking down, and I look up and say to him, you have 24 hours to leave this house. If you are still here by this time tomorrow, you will be dead because I will have killed you.
Wow.
I turn around and I walk back to my room, and I'm shaking. I am shaking. I hope he doesn't see it. But I am shaking, dude. I open the door and I close the bedroom door, and I hear footsteps behind me. I grab the bat and I stand back in the bedroom. It's dark. I had the lights off. Just the light from the outside street light was coming in. And I'm just holding the bat, and I'm hearing these footsteps. But then I notice they're getting quiet. He's walking away. Their bedroom door closes. I walk out and I go downstairs and I go to my little orange little Fiat X19 and I drive to my fiance's house. I have to stop a couple of times because I'm so nervous. I'm realizing now what I almost did. I almost committed murder. And as I said, I was okay with it. But now that it's all starting to rush in on me, I am just nervous driving. And, I'm shaking, driving, my hands are on the wheel, and I have to pull over a couple of times just to settle down and breathe. But I eventually get to my fiance's in the apartment, and she says to me, everything okay? And I said, I will know tomorrow. I get up the next morning, I go to the house. And this, once again, I am a brother trying to do something, trying to bring retribution for my sisters, trying to create some avenue to my sisters so we can talk. To say, look, I did this. I handled it for you. I stepped up. Yeah, because to me, what it means to be a brother is to protect the honor of your sister. And I hadn't done that for 9 years, but I'm about to get married. I'm like, it's going down. I'm doing this. And so I go back to the house the next day and I have my bat in hand and I'm walking up to the front door and I decide to leave the bat next to the door jamb outside. But I'm expecting to open the door and see a gun in my face because he had a 38. I'm like, okay, I'm still not out of the woods yet. I open the front door. There's no one there. The house is quiet. I go into the living room, quiet, go into the dining room, quiet, go to the stairwell, listen upstairs, quiet, no sound. I don't hear anyone walking around. But I start to hear some sound at the back of the room. I walk back to the back of the house. We had a little makeshift studio where we do some demo stuff. My younger brother's there. Opened the door and I said to him, is he still here? And he said, oh, he left. He left like after you did last night. Now, once again, no one knows what I've done. My brothers don't know. My mother knows at this point because I'm sure he told her. But my sisters and brothers have no idea. And as far as I was concerned, they didn't need to know. In fact, I did not tell them what I did until around 2010. They didn't need to know. I was just handling it because that's, I wasn't looking for fanfare.
Yeah, you weren't doing it for clout. It was just like, he's a danger to my family. He needs to go.
Yeah. And I didn't tell them. So he's gone. But
what did that moment feel like?
Man, it felt amazing because I had recaptured a sense of who I was as a man. It was like I finally measured up to be the brother my sisters needed and wanted, even though they didn't know and they did not find out till maybe 10 years ago. I finally handled it. And so my self-esteem started to return. I started to feel that all those things that were holding me back, you can't talk about it ever. All the fear, all the anxiety, all the guilt, all of it just started washing away. It was done. I had stepped into my manhood. I had stepped into my brotherhood. I had done what was necessary. And I felt so incredibly empowered. And part of that is because we go through trauma, we go through pain, we go through things like shame and crisis and confusion, and we are afraid to take those steps necessary to get us out of it because we know it's going to be painful. Not only did I know that mine was going to be painful, I expected mine to end in death,
Mm.
you know? But it was so liberating to know that I had done that. My mother continued to sneak around and see him anyway. So your question of 45 years later, the journey for me, because I hadn't told anyone what I did, I hadn't told my sisters what I had did, I was still viewed as guilty in their eyes of not protecting them,
Yeah.
of not doing anything to save them. They were still under the belief that my mother got him out of the house. I imagine if I had told them I did it, my relationship with them would have healed a lot quicker. But like I said, I wasn't looking for anything. That's a lot of times that's just how I operate. I don't need all of that stuff. I just did what had to be done. So the rebuilding of trust for our relationship was going to take a lot of work. So when my sisters found out was like this, in 2013, I was going to a conference on how to write a book put on by the great speaker and author, Lisa Nichols. I wanted to write a book about a particular subject, but I kept being pulled emotionally to write the story of a brother's experience. Because we looked around, there were no articles, there were no books, there were no movies, there were no documentaries that talked about a brother's experience. And I felt that brothers going through what I've gone through, and there are thousands of us out there, we feel alone, we feel isolated. We're in this place where mental health is the big thing. But to me, this was not about mental health. One of the challenges for me with mental health is that it's logic. People look at it logically.
And this is far from logical.
Yeah. And it says you're alone and it says you're in isolation. It's your problem. Let me write you this prescription and you go to this counselor. Let me write you this prescription and you go to this therapist. In fact, let me give you some pills for this, for your anxiety, for your depression. And most of the challenges that we go through are not mental. They're emotional. And you can't write a prescription for someone's emotional challenge. But one of the things emotional challenges do, which is why it's called the emotional challenges brothers go through, emotional challenge are about feelings. It's about shared experience. And it's about inclusion, which means on the healing path for you, you have to talk to someone.
Yeah.
You have to find a circle of friends or people, or just even one person who will allow you to talk. So I'm going to write this book, and I know I cannot write this book without telling my sisters that it's coming.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for permission, but they do need to know that it's coming and that it's going to be my story of what happened from my brother's perspective. I will describe what I thought and what I imagined happening to them and my reaction. And I'm going to tell the story because brothers need to know they are not alone in their feelings with this. Because, we have a harder time as men at times being emotional and being vulnerable. We can tend to go into this place of isolation, and our feelings are only ours, and no one can help us. We are hunters, we are gatherers, we can push through anything. We are
No
team
one
dog.
knows what I'm feeling.
Right, right. And they don't need to know I can handle this. And there's so much wrong with that. We are human beings. Our very existence requires that we interact with other people or
Yeah.
experience other people. But that's not what men are usually known for. Women are, they have that so much better unlocked than we do.
Yeah, which is
So,
bad because we had hunter gatherers and communities, and you know,
dude, dude, we all have this masculine, feminine side about us. You know, it's the feminine side is what allows us to be emotional. It's what allows us to cry. It allows us to feel and have empathy and all of these things. And yet we have to have the masculine side so we can protect and we can go get the job done and we can hunt. All of us, male and female, have those qualities. Our testosterone just tends to drive us in one direction more so than the other. Their estrogen drives it in the opposite direction.
but you need
And
both.
so,
You need both.
yeah, you need both. So, as I said, I got to write this book and I'm going to do it. But I got to talk to my sisters. My confrontation with my stepfather does not compare to the fear I'm about to experience when I call my second sister and say, I'm going to write a book. I need to talk to you.
She probably knows what's up.
She probably does. I didn't tell her. But the fear in that moment, as I said, confronting my stepfather, knowing I'm going to be killed or I'm going to murder someone, didn't compare to this because I was told I can't talk about it. And our sisters can put their brothers in such a tough spot. You know, you go through this thing where you don't want to disappoint them. You know, it's at least that's what it was for me. And here I was, I had done it. And I called her and I said, I need to come and talk to you. So she said, okay, come on over. I get to her house and she comes outside and we're standing out in front of her garage. And I say, I'm going to write a book from a brother's experience perspective about what it is brothers go through when we learn our sisters have been sexually abused. And I just break down, Tino. I am a mess. I am in tears. And I'm waiting for her reaction. I'm waiting for the volcano to explode. Oh, you can't do it. You know your boys can't talk about it. It didn't happen to you. And this is not even sister that said it. And yet I'm waiting because we haven't talked about this for 45 years.
And you were conditioned to think it.
You got that right. Condition is a very, very good description. I am conditioned to think like it, to prepare for it, to expect it. I'm ready. But what I got was, of course, you should write a book. All you boys should write a book. What?
What? I'm confused.
Time does a number of things. Time can lionize you, or time can make you into an even greater villain. But usually, as time goes by, it usually makes you into a better person in the eyes of other people. And time also gives everyone an opportunity for perspective, and understanding, and just doing things differently. And so when she says that, I was not expecting that. I didn't know what to say. She says, of course, you boys should write a book. It's not a girl's story. It's not my story. It is your story. And not only should you write a book, you should write the book so other men know what it is like, so you can help them understand they are not alone. You know, I just broke, man. I didn't know what to do. And she gives me a hug. And, you know, she's embracing me and saying, it's okay. It's okay. You need to do this.
Wonderful.
Because she also understood this was a healing thing for me. And it was also a way of me reconnecting with her. I spoke to one of my twins afterward, went to her condo and sat in the driveway of her condo for 30 minutes before I exited the condo to talk to her. I did not, once again, I'm scared, but I know I have to speak to each of them.
Mm.
I finally get to my oldest sister, number 3, and I'm sitting in my office and I pick up the phone and I dial, and I hit the off, click, put the cell phone back down, pick it up again, hit redial. Hang up. That went on for 30 minutes because I figured I had more important things to do. I had to wash some clothes. I had to go rake some leaves. I needed to go watch some paint dry on a fence or something. It was more important than talking to her.
Mm.
I mean, talking to her was nothing. Those things were really, really, really important.
Your
But
brain
I
did
am
not want to go
freaking,
there.
I am so scared.
Yeah.
This is the one who said, you can never talk about it. I finally picked up the 2,000-pound stone and make the call. I tell her what I'm getting ready to do. I just want you to know so you know what's coming. I won't be using anyone's real names. I will be giving you each different names, but I'm just telling you from a brother's perspective what I imagined happened to you. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to talk about what mom did, and I'm going to talk about what our stepdad did. I'm going to, mention what our grandmothers knew and didn't do when they knew it and let us get hung out to dry and all this sort of stuff. The aunts and uncles who knew and did nothing. But your names will all be different. Now, here's the thing. Anyone who knows the Whitney family can tell exactly who everyone is, but that's the nature of being in the public, right?
Yeah.
You can't escape it. So I tell her, and she's quiet for about 2 minutes. Oh my gosh. Here it comes. Because she had said, never talk about it. She said, okay. Okay.
You're expecting the worst. Expecting the worst.
What do you mean, okay? You said never talk about it. And I'm about to write a book and put it out there so everyone can learn from our experience. That's the idea. I said, I don't want our experience to be on the dunghill of so many other families who have gone through this and have had never been able to speak about it. They are still living in fear. I do not want that for us. I want our family's experience to be something that can heal, that can help. And we can do this. That's what this is all about. And she said, I like it. I was so scared. This was 45 years of me trying to figure this out. Just the flashbacks, the triggering songs along the way, the triggering movies, the triggering conversations, the emotional regulation of trying to keep myself together when I'm around them. And I'm just so nervous. I'm so scared. I'm hearing all these different things. Just all of it, just the distracting and intrusive thoughts about all the different failures that I had. And here I am. And she's saying, okay, I think you should do it. If that's part of the healing process.
Yeah.
Turns out, with helplessness, those 3 sisters actually contribute to the book. 2 of my brothers contribute to the book. And if you stop and think about it, how unbelievable is that? You're actually contributing to the book. You're actually sharing parts of your story about what happened to you with the brothers you say can never talk about it. And so you get this perspective from a family in such a way that has never been shared before. Because it's not a People magazine article. It's not, some fluffed up movie.
Yeah.
It's ugly, the helplessness. But helplessness is part of the 3-book series. I'm now writing hopefulness, and that's how you begin to find your way out of it. And then happiness is where I'm at right now, because no matter what, you can never escape all this. It's still part of your DNA. It has been quite a journey for this brother. Quite a journey.
By the sounds of it, yeah, it really has. And I was just listening to you as you were sort of saying, you're going to your sisters and you're really scared about what was going to happen. Your brain was procrastinating and being like, don't make that call, don't make the call, but you have to make the call. Oh, but my washing is so much more important than this call, which
Right.
you definitely know it's not.
Part of the thing when I tell this story, and I do a lot of speaking, is oftentimes women, there's always one woman in the audience will say, well, your sisters were right. It didn't happen to you. It only happened to them. Even though I think it does happen to brothers. And we can't get into this my oranges versus your apples conversation. You cannot do that. Trauma is trauma. But it is only when I say 6 years before my sisters in 1966, my older brother and I were sexually abused by our babysitter almost daily for 6 months. So I do understand more than you can possibly imagine. I do understand what it's like to have things done to you and you have to perform and do these things by our babysitter. I do. And then it's like, oh, he does get it. He's part of the team. But for me, I shouldn't have to go there.
Yeah, you shouldn't have.
But I do.
To happen.
Yeah, but historically, what men had done to women, it makes sense. It's like, I know why my sister said we can't talk about it. She's protected herself.
Yeah.
She's protected her little sister. So I understand both sides of the child sexual abuse court. I understand the damage side and I understand the collateral damage side. And it gives me a position where most people don't when they're talking about their sexual abuse, particularly their child sexual abuse. So when I'm talking to women and when I'm talking to women in the audience here, they say, oh, okay, he does get it. So my story is to try to elevate the voices of brothers so we can have a conversation so people will ask us, are you okay? Do you need to talk? Do you need anything? What support do you need? What tools do you need to help you get through it? Because at the Lisa Nichols thing, I was called up on stage to share a story. And the story I was going to share got pushed aside because this came spilling out. I just had to let it go.
Mm.
And by the time I was done, I had gone back to my seat, and then I was swarmed by women saying to me, I should have told my brother. I had no idea he was going through this. I just figured he didn't know. He didn't want to know. How can I help you? What do I do? And it became too much. And so I got up and I left the hall. And the hall had about 600 people in the room. There were about 5,000 people watching live stream. And here I am going through this in front of all these people, and it just got to be too much. So out in the hall, I'm hyperventilating. And I'm like, what did I just do? What did I just do? All those women, they were just surrounding me. And then the doors burst open and more women surrounded me. More women wanted to talk to me, tell me, what should I do? How do I go about this? I should have told my brother, I'm so sorry you're going through this. I should have done this. And it's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But, it was 3 women separately. Their stories are the ones that stick with me and haunt me the most. These 3 women, they didn't even know each other. But 3 women told me I should have told my brother, I should have allowed him to talk because he wasn't allowed to ask me anything. I didn't want to hear from him. And the pain became too much for him. Their brothers took their lives because they felt guilt and shame, and they felt that they betrayed their sister, and it just became too much. And so I realized, I gotta elevate the voices of brothers so we're in the conversation. It can no longer be you can't talk about it, but you're expected to answer for it. We must be in the conversation. We must have tools. We must have systems to help us overcome and work through our emotional trauma and then challenges.
There's so much that I want to explore in all of that. But I think it's a good time to sort of, you're talking about those 3 men that, committed suicide. And it just sort of brings it home, doesn't it? Because we always think, and rightly so, we think of the victim's experience. But trauma impacts everyone's lives. It impacts all aspects of everybody involved. And I want to know from you sort of what advice you can give to brothers out there that are struggling, supporting their siblings through trauma or going through trauma even themselves.
I think it's important to recognize that each individual's reaction, as I said earlier, they are distinct and they're shaped by their personal connection with each of their sisters. And so, one of the things that you can do initially is possibly the most important thing, and that's recognizing that you are a victim and knowing that you are okay. It took me, I didn't learn or even accept that I was a victim until I was 57. My wife and I, we were talking as I was writing Helplessness. It took me 10 years. I started in 2013 and finished in 2023. But in 2017, I'm in bed and I'm telling her about a particular passage. And she says to me, you're a victim. And I said, no, I'm not. I feel like, what's going on? I'm in this passage. She said, of course you're a victim. All you boys are victims. And I'm like, no, you tripping. I am not. There's nothing wrong with me. And she said, look at you. You're a mess. You're shaky. You can barely say what you want to say. How can you not see you are a victim? I'm 57 years old and I still did not recognize it. I didn't recognize being a victim by my babysitter. I did not recognize being a victim of collateral damage from what happened to my sister. And it goes to what you said. It's never just the victim. It's everyone else that they know who are particularly close to them, because whether they know it or not, it has impacted their relationship. Here I am. I did not accept that I was a victim until she said that. And it was like, what? How did I not see it? So I go to the dictionary, or rather I go to Google, look it up.
Sexual victim. Yeah.
You are a victim of child sexual abuse. It's so many ways. I'm like, shit, that dog it. And it just became a different situation. So I had to accept the fact that I am a victim. And unless you can accept the fact that you are a victim, you cannot move into survivor mode. Then you have to accept the fact that your trauma is like DNA. And my DNA, it manifests itself in so many ways. It impacts your life in so many ways. It impacts your personal relationships. It impacts your relationship with your spouse, your sisters, your brothers, your parents. Speaking of parents, talk about trauma. How do you put that back together? If you do it all, it's like there's just so much. So mine began to replicate and manifest in ways I did not recognize. It started to impact my relationship with my little son, because I would see his report card and I'd see his name, and his name had my old stepfather's name on it, and I would start to treat him differently. And then I recognized, oh, no. I cannot let every time I see that last name change me.
Bring you back to
So I immediately, so my wife and I, we immediately changed that name. But whenever I see the name or hear his last name, it triggers me. And it took me a long time to figure out that that's what was happening. So you have to be able to accept and embrace that what has happened to you is a part of you. It's not going anywhere. You then need to try to do the most important step and find someone, at least one person you can talk to, who will let you talk about your trauma, which is very difficult, as we talked about, for men. Because me and my brothers did not talk about it amongst ourselves, and yet we're all part of the same club.
Mm.
We still didn't talk about it. We're still part of the Whitney Boys stuff club, and we were still afraid to talk to each other about it because we didn't want to judge each other. I didn't want them judging me. How come you didn't do this? They didn't want to hear me. You could have done this. You should have done it. We were so afraid of that stigma amongst ourselves. Who wants to talk about it outside your family?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, Jesus Christ. it is such a heavy situation. So I was able to find to solace by talking to my older brother. Finally, it took years, and then talking to one of my sisters who was on my podcast. I have a conversation between me and my brother and one of my youngest sisters, one of the twins. That was the first time that was almost 50 years later. We finally talked about it. And here we are sharing with the world in this podcast so people could see that you can get there if you want. So there's that. Then there's also well, let me say this. Everyone, man, woman, boy or girl, sister, brother, we all want the same thing. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. We all want to be understood. But none of that can take place unless we start to talk. Once I started to talk, as I said, the shackles went away. Once my sister, who I even done the podcast with read the book, she said to me, I had no idea you boys were going through this, that you've been carrying all this, that it has still been, this is still bothering you. I had no idea. I just thought you boys didn't care.
Yeah.
I just thought you boys weren't interested. You were like, me and my brother were like, no, you said we couldn't talk about it. Women do not allow us to be part of the conversation. So we have to just, we have to just hide it. And she's like, oh, I had no idea. Talked to another sister. She said, what? You're still having a hard time? I'm like, of course, because we've never been able to release it.
Yeah.
You guys have been able to release it. You talk to friends, you talk to different people. Us, oh no, we are carrying this burden, and we were going to carry it to our grave until I wrote the book. If you have time, there's one other example I can give you of how powerful this is.
Go ahead.
After I had written the book, I gave a copy to my stepfather, rather my father-in-law. Now, my father-in-law is white, and he's Jewish. He has since passed away a couple of years ago. Great guy. I'm Black. I grew up Baptist, and I grew up poor. They grew up middle class, so completely different upbringing.
Yeah.
So I give him the book, and I don't think anything of it. And a couple of months goes by, he calls me, he says, I want you to come to the house. I need to talk to you. Okay.
Am I in trouble?
Our relationship is really, really good. But I'm like, this sounds ominous, right? Did I do something wrong? Something you didn't like? Okay, let's hash it out. And man, we're gonna add this conversation. Cool. So I get to the house and my mother-in-law's not there, which is odd because she's always there.
Okay.
I walk in and I look on the dining room table. And in front of him is my book. Okay. I take a seat. He's in his 90s. He said, I want to talk to you about this book. I read it. Okay, Dad, everything okay? He said, yeah. I want to share something with you that I have only shared with one other person, my wife. Okay. When I was a boy, we lived in New York. We lived in a 2-story apartment unit. We were downstairs and we had neighbors upstairs. Okay, where is he going with this? I'm starting to think something. I'm about to hear something. He said, my mother or my father said, I couldn't remember, wanted me to go upstairs to our neighbor and ask for something. It could be eggs, could be flour, sugar, something. He said, so I went upstairs and our doors were always open because we were really good neighbors. They can come in our place, you can go in their place, not a big deal.
Yeah.
So I go on in to their apartment and I hear a sound. And I walk to the bedroom and I open the bedroom door. My sister was being molested by the neighbor, the male neighbor.
Oh.
I just looked. I didn't know what to do. I turned around and I ran out and I went downstairs and I didn't say anything.
Oh.
It happened again 3 months later. And I didn't say anything. My sister and I never talked about it. She saw me in the doorway both times. We never talked about it. So I want you to know, I know exactly what you went through. He's in his 90s and he wants someone to know. He wants to unburden himself. He wants someone to know what he did. He wants someone to understand. He wanted me to know his Black son-in-law from the inner city who grew up poor. He wanted him to know. He wanted someone to hear him. This crosses wealth lines, it crosses religious lines, it crosses political, it crosses race, it crosses education, it crosses social standing. This crosses borders, it crosses oceans. This abuse, child sexual abuse, is everywhere. There is no, this is not isolated to one race. This is not isolated to one group. My book is meant to make people vigilant, to pay attention, to listen. But more importantly, as I said, it's to elevate the voices of brothers so we can be in the conversation, because we need tools, we need systems to help us. So we all want to move forward. We all want to be positive in our lives. And a lot of times it takes just someone listening. This whole experience for me of doing all this talking and sharing, and my goal is to, as I keep saying, bring brothers into the conversation. But what it has done for me personally, it has made me so much stronger. I'm becoming bulletproof with this stuff to the point that I feel that emotionally, this is my therapy. It turns out, I realized earlier this week that's what this has become.
Yeah.
And now I have people like you who ask me questions that they want to hear, and I get a chance to share and exchange some dialogue. And I realize that's really what it's about. It's about the talking. It's about being allowed the space to do that.
And I guess having the conversations and being able to ask the questions and not sort of, and I know like when there's something you really want to talk about and you can't, you rack your brain and you're like, what about this? What about that? You go through all possibilities, all eventualities, and really it can be as simple as your sister saying, okay, I like that. It can be as simple as that. Obviously, that conversation when you were 17 wouldn't have been that simple, but it would have allowed the healing to start for you.
And at least it would have brought us into it. It would have made us, we were already a part of it. There's no question about it. As soon as we found out, we became a part of it.
Yeah.
But it would have put us in a place where we could have conversation with them. And just that conversation, like you're saying, that brings about healing just because you're able to talk, because you do have this commonality now. And, it's all still part of the family, but we were not allowed to do that as most men are, because truth be told, women control the narrative on this. And as I said, rightfully so, because historically what men have done, as my older brother said, if you're a guy, you should just assume that every woman just assume it, has had some sort of sexual abuse encounter. Just assume it and operate from that standpoint with them. And then you are in a different place. And that's a great place to be, because every time I have these conversations, particularly with women, they open up. They start telling me their story.
So Keeper, I've loved this whole conversation that we've had. I usually ask my guest a final question. We sort of discussed it about masculinity and boys, but I think there's enough in what we've talked about. And it's been a powerful conversation. I've felt myself crying at times. I've felt heavy, but I think there's also a lot of light in what you've shared.
Well, our story is at the end of the day about hope and triumph and survivor and being a survivor, because at the end of it, in 2021, I'm able to confront my stepfather again. And it's all in the book, how I actually it's at a church in Van Nuys that I take over the church after a service for 90 minutes. And it's spectacular. And I'm able to call my sisters and say, I did this for you. And they're like, "You did what?" I said, yes, I had to complete a mission. I had to do it. So, there's a lot of hope. And even in the darkness of this story, when there's a lot of it, we all came out okay.
Mhm.
I have great relationships with three of my sisters now. We talk a lot, we see each other a lot, and it's because I took the steps to want to talk. I felt the fear and I did it anyway. As the book would say, feel the fear and do it anyway. I just knew that was the only way through. I had to go through it.
So Keeper, before you leave, I want you to plug yourself, mate. Where can people find you? Where can people find helplessness? And I will give a recommendation for your podcast as well, because I listened to the first episode where you talked about what happened to you, and I look forward to seeing the other conversations as well with your sisters and brothers. But plug yourself, my friend.
Well, I appreciate that you took the time to do that. People can get the book Helplessness on Amazon, which,
It's everywhere.
it's everywhere. If you want to know more about me, you can always go to keepercatran-whitney.com. There's the website. There's the podcast. There's free stuff there. You can also go to my Keeper Catran-Whitney YouTube page and watch all sorts of stuff. We're finally getting into the whole business of TikTok and Instagram, so you're going to be able to just see conversations there, just engaging things. If you want to reach out to me for any reason, you can go to keepercw.author.com. Like I said, I do a lot of speaking. I'm always available to do those things. And it's become a very interesting time for me, gratifying, because I'm able to bring exposure for brothers. So, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you allowing me to be here and use your platform. And I hope to see you again. I would love to continue this conversation or another conversation. I would love to come back. Talk about toxic masculinity or something really fun.
We could have some very fun conversations. Trauma, just generally about trauma and men. Easily. There's so many topics, and I definitely have loved this conversation. I think there's times where I go without recording an episode, then you just feel really tired at the end of the day. Yeah, okay, gotta do this. But like, for me, the time passes away, and I just love being in the moment and talking about it. And your story is I say amazing, but that doesn't really, it sounds not awful, but it's like amazing. And he's talking about trauma, but no, you sharing your story with me and with my audience and with the world is amazing. And it is going to help a lot of brothers out there that are going through it. So I really thank you for coming on and for sharing as well.
Happy to be here.